Thank you, guys. Well, so great to be here in Pennsylvania. I wore my special socks today for Penn State, right? We're thrilled to be here. It's amazing. I always hear there's all these socialists on campus, and it's just, we don't like those, right? We're glad you're here, right? Maybe they'll learn something, right? Maybe they'll learn something. We hope every socialist will learn something sometime soon. But it's great to be here. We're going to be talking about why America is indeed the greatest country ever to exist in the history of the world. We're going to be talking about our phenomenal president and the success that he is achieving for our country every day. And I always get a kick out of the hecklers. They act as if they're being rebels. You know, the professors are liberal. Their parents are probably liberal. The textbooks are liberal. The music they listen to is liberal. All of Hollywood is liberal. Most of the camp. Who are you rebelling against exactly? But it sure makes them feel good, doesn't it? But I'm just so honored to be here tonight with two people that are just incredible fighters for our country and for the values of free enterprise and the Constitution and American exceptionalism, truly. And so get on your feet to welcome Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle, right? You know, I wonder if the media is going to cover the fact. No. That was quick. That in the state of Pennsylvania, which is a beautiful state, and I do have to say, you guys did vote the right way last time. You really did, right?
True story. Not fake news.
Not fake news. That in this amazing state, we had standing room only, had students wait hours to get in to hear from Don Jr. and Kimberly, and not every young person has to be socialist, right? Not every young person has to be a Bernie Sanders bro, I guess what they call it. Is that right? No? But it's really something, and I just want to say on behalf of our Turning Point USA chapter, thank you, Don, and thank you, Kimberly, for coming to the front lines. It's not easy, but we do really, really appreciate it, coming out here on a college campus and just giving an update to our amazing students and giving some reinforcement and just being here in, I like to think, one of the great universities in America. Actually one of the greatest.
But it's not really anything new for us, though, Charlie, because, I mean, we weren't supposed to be doing this in 2016, and yet we did it. And this is sort of the story of how I met Charlie Kirk. A couple friends introduced me, and they said, "You got to meet this young guy. He's really good at this stuff. He's forgotten more about it." You know, we were learning along the way, right? It was a big trial run, learning on the way. And I started asking some information. I said, "Tell me a little bit about Charlie Kirk." He said, "Well, he's forgotten more about this stuff than most of these older guys know. Give me a little bit more. I go, he's 21. I go, hard pass. Hard. And I was like, we didn't know enough about what we were doing. The last thing we needed to do was hear from a 21-year-old who wouldn't have known anything about what we were doing. And one of my friends was rather convincing, and he got me to take the meeting. And within 5 minutes, I go, congratulations, you're traveling with me. Let's set it up. And we did that. I mean, we did college campuses, in those places that don't exist other than election years, Michigan. We were, we had to point that one out on a map for Hillary. Luckily.
And so it begins.
No, it's the big one, surrounded by water on both sides. It goes like, it was right there. And, Charlie and I, we did that. We actually, one of the great stories of the 2016 campaign was in Michigan where, it was a little different than now, right? We sort of small team, very organic. We just sort of jumped. We'd look at some data and be like, okay, we're going to go there and make something happen. And we spoke at Michigan State University. And, we get there, and it was a room probably actually a little bit bigger than this. Standing room only. The only difference was it was about 50-50 hater to lover. And there was a guy from the Michigan State Police backstage, and he walked up to me and Charlie. He goes, "Sir, where's your security team?" I said, "You're looking at them." And he goes, "This is going to really not work out so well for you." I go, listen, I would rather take the beating than give those guys the win. And we went out there, and it was honestly one of the most electric moments because, so much of what we did in the campaign was actually having a real conversation with people, not hiding from that kind of stuff. And it made all the difference in the world. I want to thank you for that, Charlie, because, we weren't supposed to be there. No Republican was supposed to be there. You're never going to win. You can't possibly do it. And it just goes to show you that you can.
And I saw the potential on the front lines. And when I was going to these college campuses, we'd be asking students, who are you voting for? Either the answer was, Hillary, or Trump.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Trump. And I was like, wait a second. There's a silent majority out here. We started to bring Don to these campuses here in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. The crowds were amazing. Ohio, the places in between Manhattan and Malibu that Hillary Clinton never visited. She blames the Russians for her loss. Yeah. And how can you blame the Russians when you don't visit Wisconsin the last 3 months of your campaign? Tell me how that's Moscow's fault.
They made her not go.
Oh, that's right. So she was colluding with, she was colluding with the Ukrainians, but that's besides the point. No collusion, no obstruction, right? No collusion. No collusion.
It took 2 years. It took 2 years, but we're finally there. Right, Princess?
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, it's great that the Mueller report comes out. Fine, no collusion, no obstruction. But we should not be celebrating the fact that this first family and the president is vindicated from a lie. This is a total lie and an inside job that was a failed coup d'etat at the highest levels of the FBI to try to destabilize a duly elected president. For 2 years, $30 million. Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, these people at the highest levels of power got away with something. And I'm telling you, it's time to investigate the investigators.
That's right.
Because it is not right what these people have done.
Yeah, well, justice delayed is not justice denied, and there should be a full and thorough investigation because the only collusion was between the mainstream media and between certain individuals in the FBI, and shame on those that really tried to remove a duly elected president from the Oval Office, from the White House, because they wanted a do-over. They don't like the election results. But as you see, this family and Don Jr. and his family who, have given up so much and sacrificed so much to fight on behalf of the country, on behalf on, for example, here in Pennsylvania, the hard-working men and women that were left behind. They said, we're going to not sit on the sidelines. We're going to jump in on the front lines and fight. And through tremendous expense and heartache, but they never complained once, they've held the line. And that's what I think is so remarkable, to be able to see what you guys have been able to do, notwithstanding all the pressure and the legal bills and the lies and defamation about you and your family.
Well, thank you. And it really goes, there's sort of two parts to that, which is, A, I don't think we were naive to what the fight was going to be like. Perhaps we were naive to how vicious it was going to be when you really think about that. I mean, No one discusses. I watch the media to this day. Oh, Donald Trump Jr. didn't. I did 27 hours. Think about that. 27 hours of voluntary. It was supposed to be private, but, the shifts of the world are leaking it within seconds. While I'm in this.
On bathroom break.
Pretending like we then weren't cooperating with this. I mean, think about that. Imagine doing 27 hours of testimony for a 20-minute meeting set up by the other side. There's no investigation of the other side. There's no look at that, but don't kid yourself. The Mueller report and Mueller and his team of leftist lawyers, they accomplished a big part of really their end goal, which is ultimately... It's the Russians. Yeah. Damn Russians everywhere.
Again.
But they really did. They accomplished a big part of what their goal, which is in the 2018 midterms, they were able to hold this fake, contrived by them, that they are totally complicit in hoax, the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people. They were able to hold that over the head of the sitting president and use it as a negative. They didn't talk about, and look, over the last 2 years, they don't talk about all-time low African-American unemployment. That's not a soundbite. They don't, there's more.
There's a lot more.
They don't talk about all-time low Hispanic unemployment.
That's right.
They don't talk about all-time high stock markets. Today, S&P and NASDAQ broke all-time records again. They don't talk about any of those things, right? All-time for women. I mean, there is literally not a single economic metric where we are not better off today than we were 3 years ago under President Obama. Think about it. I heard a couple hecklers before we came out here, but seriously, name one legit economic metric where we are worse off today than we were 3 years ago. The reality, guys, is it doesn't exist. The only farce, and the media tried to sell this one, but it was even too hard for them to sell, was Obama coming out and saying, well, remember where that started, because we all know that oppressive taxation, hyper-regulation, a disaster consumer confidence, and a general mentality of, remember, quote-unquote, you didn't build that? That wasn't going to help the economy. That's what created the worst economic recovery in American history. There's a reason why on November 9th, every consumer confidence metric went through the roof, because it wasn't that they had a business guy in the White House. It was that after 8 years, they just didn't think that there was going to be people actively trying to subvert their business in the White House. It's hard to believe, but that's what it was. I mean, when my father campaigned in 2016, again, he was just another guy making promises. We've heard that for decades from our politicians. We've seen it ad nauseum. It's a big part of why we won, because they're sick of people making these promises that they had no ability to deliver. It was like Hillary Clinton talking about jobs. Name one job you've ever created, Hillary, other than lobbyists and perhaps some foreign agents. I apologize for that, but I have to put in the caveat. Otherwise, the fake news media will say that I'm lying. So we'll give them the hiring of foreign operatives and these sort of things, but otherwise she'd never done it. So there was always the difference between theory and practice. What I knew when I was campaigning in this state, what my father was campaigning all over, what we call flyover country, everywhere between New York and Malibu. This is a guy, my father, who's actually created real jobs, who's actually had people's livelihoods, their families' well-being dependent on his success each and every day. No one in the political class can actually say that anymore, and that's a little scary. So we gave a chance to a business guy, and look at the results. That's why 2020 is so important, because 2016, it was just promises. It could have been failed promises like every other guy before him, but he's actually delivered. There's actually a lot to lose. When he joked and he said, hey, what do you have to lose voting for me? He was right. Now, You vote against this? You vote against one of these policies where everything's magically for free, even though I'm not sure how that works?
They're not sure
It
either.
defies the laws of economics, but they're magically free. Don't worry. It'll take care of itself. You actually have a lot to lose. Your 401k, you guys are college kids, right? How about your job prospects? You want to shut down business and their hiring practices, both big and small? I wouldn't. I certainly didn't when I was in your shoes. Feels like a long time ago now, unfortunately, looking around the room. But
Don.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
But in the Green New Deal,
Right.
in the original draft, it says they want to pay people who are, quote, unwilling to work.
Unwilling to work.
Now, mind you,
Not unable, because let's make it clear. There are going to be people that are unable to work for
we
whatever.
should take care of those
These are just people unwilling. And what's really scary about the Green New Deal, because, conceptually,
Besides
sounds
everything.
wonderful, is that it's an idea put forth by a freshman congresswoman that every major announced candidate totally backed. Now, this is a candidate who introduced it that 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, did not know the three branches of government.
This is true.
But more importantly, that's actually a true story. I mean, I don't know, you'd think that'd be a big deal if you're in Congress, but
It's like, where
hey,
am I?
we're going to give her
Where
the
am I?
pass on that one. But think about it this way. $93 trillion price tag for that alone. So let's just say this. The United States government has a revenue stream of about $6 trillion a year. So when they talk about $93 trillion, like this is a wonderful idea, that means if the U.S. government funded nothing other than the elimination of farting cows and, magic buses to Hawaii because you eliminated our airfare, it would take 15 years to pay for this. And then their answer is, it will just pay for itself. Well, how? Well, we don't know that. So Mitch McConnell, actually, I'll give him credit. He actually said, okay, guys, this is a wonderful concept. We're going to let you vote on it. That's outrageous. This is political
You're trying
theater.
to kill the bill.
So you have all major Democratic people running saying this is a wonderful plan,
But they don't wanna
not
vote on
realizing that it's 15 times the U.S. budget, assuming, again, we just get rid of a little thing called, like, the military or the liberals' favorite, like foreign aid to countries that hate us. If you got rid of all of that stuff, you take away the funds from the flag burners, for 15 years, you could do nothing. I mean, but they run with it like it's a viable concept. And then when Mitch McConnell says, okay, vote on it, they vote present. And they say it's political theater that he let them vote on the bill that they all endorsed. This is the
very
problem with our
dishonest.
political
That's
system
the
because
problem.
we've let them get away with it for so long because the mainstream media is just the marketing wing of the DNC at this point. Okay? There's no accountability. They're running around saying, see, we were right about the Mueller report. I go, what? Like,
Did you
now
read
they're
it?
trying every other tactic. I'm old enough to remember 3 weeks ago when Mueller was going to be the savior of the left. Not so much anymore, so now they'll come up with another tactic. So they sue us, or they sue my father. They want to get Barron Trump's and my daughter's records because anyone that's related to Trump, because maybe he's doing something shady in his little savings account there as a 13-year-old. This is literally what they've done when they have no policy, when they have no actual legislation, when they can't stand that you're actually delivering and doing good for America. Think about that. You have a Democratic Party that is furious and upset that the President of the United States is not colluding with the Russians. They're really upset about
They're
it.
crying over it.
You have a party that would not stand up during the State of the Union talking about delivering all-time low unemployment for really everyone, but especially for a lot of minority classes. You'd think that'd be a good thing. To me, as an American, it's really upsetting when I watch the Congressional Black Caucus not even acknowledge or applaud the President of the United States who delivered all-time low African-American unemployment. That's a problem. But no one talks about it. There's no accountability. I mean, Charlie, and you're one of the few people out there actually taking this on, actually holding them to task. And they have no answers because they've gotten away with it. They're so indoctrinated. It's just, well, how do we attack Trump next? How do we take good news and turn it into bad news for Trump? As opposed to, maybe we should question the moronic and failed policies of the other side that have gotten us into all of these messes and holes over the years.
And not only is it the lowest ever black unemployment, it is the lowest ever black poverty rate. It is prison reform. Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and 150 circuit court judges, the largest ever middle-class tax cut in American history. America is finally energy independent. I could go on all day long. I guarantee you I got more successes and complaints than you have, my friend.
Well,
Charlie.
Well, and guys, you know, as someone who fought with him and alongside Charlie Kirk, I can handle this one because I did this. I spent 295 days on the road in the last 18 months, and no one works harder than this guy. No one has spent more time on the road fighting for these. No one. No one in the history of U.S. politics has accomplished what he has at his age. Don't kid yourself. So you can say what you want from the cheap seats, but buddy, I haven't seen you do anything. They can't create on their own, so they try to disrupt. Rather than come up with a viable argument, they want to attack.
Because they have no platform, no ideas,
USA,
no honesty, and no courage.
USA, USA, USA.
USA.
Imagine chanting USA at a DNC rally. They'd throw you out. They'd throw you out.
Root for the other country.
No. Well, because they know their policies have failed, so they have to give those opportunities to people that aren't actually Americans. You know, it'd be one thing to help out others, and I'm all for that. But it's not like we don't have problems of our own still. We're working to solve those, but we're number 28 in education behind a long list of third world countries while paying per capita more than anyone. I mean, think about that. How about we fix that? How about we take U.S. taxpayer dollars and help educate U.S. kids?
Yeah.
How about...
Instead of on phony investigations,
How about
right?
we take that money and use it to fix the VA system? They're making great strides, but they hadn't for decades.
God bless our veterans.
For those Americans who bled for our country. You know, the fact that this is a controversial soundbite in America these days tells you everything that you need to know.
You know, it's so amazing how angry the left is. Isn't it amazing?
I know.
It's unbelievable.
They're not really tolerant. They got a good marketing campaign pretending they are, but if you question them even a little bit, you're persona non grata.
The left, the campus left in particular, they preach tolerance when in reality they are the most intolerant
But they don't
people
show any,
you
do
will
they?
ever come across.
Yeah.
Well, make this the free speech point about the. And listen, you seeing the violence that's been perpetrated against conservatives on college campuses, it's got to be hundreds to one
Interrupting
versus the other way
someone when they're
around.
talking.
But it was great to see my father actually sign an executive order making sure you guarantee free speech because that's the other side.
Absolutely.
They don't want free speech. They just want to be able to say whatever they want to say without you being able to counter it.
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you, have you ever seen when a liberal comes and speaks on campus, conservatives heckle that person or protest or try to not have them talk? Because we actually want the marketplace of ideas. We want debate and
Absolutely.
dialogue and discussion. The left, they hate the idea that there are other ideas. The left will do everything they possibly can to make sure other ideas are not present because they are cowards. They can't debate. They can't have conversation. All they can do is yell and interrupt and try to silence people because they're afraid. They're afraid of having someone challenge them because they know that when their ideas come to light, they know when their ideas come to light that they will be disproven And they might actually be convinced. So all they can do is come to events like this and make a fool of themselves and to scream and to yell. And this is exactly what is happening right now.
Well,
and
see, you see this, Charlie, and you're unafraid and unabashed in your ability to get people out and listen to different viewpoints, right?
And that's what
but
it's
how
all
about
about.
being respectful for the process? There's Q&A. We're happy to answer your question. Let Charlie Kirk finish what he has to say.
And it's so amazing because there are only a few conservative events every year on a semester. And the liberals do whatever they can to ruin it for the hundreds of students that have waited in line, for the hundreds of students that have drove miles and miles and miles to be here, for the high school kids that asked to get out of school early. And it's so unfortunate because you don't see conservative hecklers. You don't see conservative Antifa. But instead, the left, this is not denounced, it is embraced. But you know what? We do love freedom of speech, and socialists should have a right to make fools of themselves. Don't we agree with that?
They do it so well, Charlie.
And, you know, going back to what you were saying, Don, just the unbelievable success of this administration never gets talked about, whether it be the lowest ever Hispanic unemployment, the lowest ever Asian American unemployment. I can't imagine how sad one's life must be to come to somebody else's event and spoil it for the other 750 people.
You're just so pathetic and starved for attention, it's sad. Go see a therapist and let us talk to these people.
Kick 'em out!
USA! 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 These guys.
Now, here's the fun
Bye,
part.
Felicia. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Yeah. Well, those guys wanted to heckle a Hispanic woman, so they're obviously racist, right? That's how the game works, right?
They should know better. Don't mess with the Puerto Rican woman.
And here's the fun part of this whole thing, which they may or may not realize. That will be seen by millions of people and may or may not hamper future job opportunities or whatever they want to do. So,
but Charlie, they're one of the guys not willing to work, so it doesn't really matter.
Unwilling
to work.
But I'll tell you, just...
Can we get those guys back in here?
No! By the way, do we love our police or do we love our police, right? Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. God bless the men and women in blue. Thank you.
No, these guys are amazing, and for the last, for a long time, their job got harder and harder because they could try to do their job on a daily basis, and some guy with a 30-page rap sheet breaks free, runs into a door, and claims police brutality. I mean, that's the crap that these guys had to put. No, it happens all the time. Guys lose their jobs, their pensions. It's great that we see that kind of support for them because these guys work hard, and they do a rough and not easy job every day. So thank you guys again. We really appreciate it.
Tremendous public service.
And I do want to talk about, and I mentioned it earlier, just this unbelievably dangerous rise of socialism, especially on college campuses. A couple myths surrounding socialism. First of all, has anyone ever heard, well, it's never been tried? Has anyone heard of this before?
It's failed like 976 times. Hundreds of millions of people dead.
That's right. And over the last 100 years,
exactly.
but somehow a 78-year-old socialist from Vermont who has accomplished nothing in his life, who has 3 houses, is now a million. Do you notice now, Don? He doesn't say millionaires and billionaires anymore because he's actually a millionaire now.
Bernie only goes against billionaires because he's a millionaire. So think about the irony that Bernie used capitalism to sell socialism to become a millionaire. Think about it.
Well, here's a question, Don.
Think about it.
You know, he says, you want to be a millionaire, you can buy a book, sell a book, or whatever the heck he says. And why did he, no, here's a serious question. Why did he not give the book for free on his website? No, seriously. Why make money off of a book?
Right.
How dare you profit? You know what the
For
margins
those
are on a book?
unwilling to purchase it.
Charlie, he only wants your money, not his money is different.
Because he could have easily put it on BernieSanders.com and made it a long blog post for everyone to read, make it free of charge, and just ask for voluntary donations. But instead, he engaged in a capitalist enterprise and signed $1 million advance and went on a multi-city book tour in private jets, $304,000 worth of private jet travel, by the way. I guarantee you all in the audience don't have $304,000, and if you do, okay, well, donate it to the Trump campaign, please, in 2020. My goodness.
True story.
But why didn't he give it for free? Why does Bernie Sanders take the tax cut that was afforded to him in the Trump tax cut? Why not donate that money to the IRS? It's because he and all socialists are alike are the ultimate hypocrites. They want to tell other people to live differently on how they actually live themselves.
Well, Bernie, we want our fair share of your money, right? Isn't that what he campaigns about?
But what I love about that soundbite, it's always someone else deciding what your fair share is.
Right.
Now, if you look at the way the tax code breaks down, what are the numbers? I mean,
well, for example, the rich pay an overwhelmingly more amount than people would realize. But the stunning statistic is 50% of America, the bottom 50% of taxpayers only pay 3% of the tax burden. So think about that.
Sounds like someone else is paying their fair share.
When the top 10%, and the exact numbers escape me, but it's somewhere between 40 to 45% of the top 10% pay 40 to 45%. Way more than the percentage they actually earn. And it's disproportionate to the idea, the rich don't pay their fair share. But first of all, if you actually look at how you file your taxes, a lot of the quote-unquote rich, they look like millionaires on paper. They're filing personally, but they own small businesses. They own dry cleaneries or restaurants, and it looks like they're making millions of dollars, but it just shows millions in personal income. But the expenses are so high that they might be taking home $40,000 or $50,000 because of such high expenses, healthcare costs, travel costs, so on and so forth. And it's so deceiving the amount of people that actually file individually. But of course,
and that's what was so,
tell you that.
for me going around the country, what was so awesome about the tax cuts. You know, and the media, we'll get into the media side of this in a little bit, but, I'd go to these small businesses in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, all over the place, on the road. Don, I was able to add 7 full-time new employees. I'm like, oh, wow, it's great. How big is the business? Well, we had 10 before that. I mean, think about that. That's a huge increase. I mean, those are so many people that are benefiting from this. But what's the most disgraceful aspect of it is in the last 10 days or last week, I've been watching the media not even hiding it anymore. They're laughing on social media how they acknowledge that 93% or something crazy of the country has received a benefit from tax cuts, but that they've done an effective job in making people believe that they didn't. I mean, Kamala Harris last couple weeks ago was saying, well, your tax refunds are down. Guess what? Your tax refunds are down because you're paying less in taxes. It also means you're giving the government less of an interest-free loan, that they're just paying you back your money. It's not like you're paying less in taxes. You're just not overpaying as much and giving the government essentially a free loan for the year.
Do the math.
But think about the lack of understanding of basic economics. I mean, you're going to make trillion-dollar decisions for the country. You're going to fix this. You're going to tax the hell out of everyone. And this is the talking point that you're going to go out with because you believe your base to be so ignorant that they don't see through it, and you know that the media will never question it because in their attempts to do anything to attack Trump, they're just going to lie. And, I mean, it was on Twitter, there's guys joking, be like, hey, we've done a good job of making people believe they didn't get benefits when they actually had. Well, I mean, think about that as the state of modern media. I mean, it's one example of thousands, but it's a pretty big one.
Well, and same with the Mueller report. They're bragging as if they're proud that they deceived the American people to think that there's still something more. Hold on a second. if Bob Mueller with $30 million and 12 angry Democrats and 2 years couldn't find collusion or criminal activity, then Adam Schiff is not going to find anything, okay? Elijah Cummings is not going to find anything.
But it's always moving of the goalposts, Charlie.
Of course.
Because first it was collusion. When they started to realize that that wasn't going to fly a couple weeks ago, because there were just all the Democrats were leaking saying, hey, we got nothing on this. Then it started with obstruction. Then it was, Barr came out with his thing, and no, there's going to be magic in the report. No magic. So now they're doing this. They try to file, they filed subpoenas for literally my father and any of his relatives for their bank accounts to try to, yes, my 4-year-old daughter, Chloe, yes, she's money laundering. She's
very woke.
But think of the desperation. Yes, she is one of those woke kids on Twitter that you read about where, you see some of these leftists. My 3-year-old daughter asked me about the existential threat of nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula. I'm like, I'm calling bullshit. I am. One of the people in this room actually has babysat for us for a few years. She goes here. She's a good. I won't call her out because I don't want her subjected to the haters, but she knows baby Chloe. And while Chloe is cute and somewhat aggressive,
very savage,
Chloe knows nothing about the nuclear threat of the proliferation of nuclear. She doesn't. She's not. She's a 4-year-old. So, in woke society, though, this is sort of the new soundbite. My 3-year-old was very worried about the future and was asking me all these in-depth questions that, it's asinine, but they run with it and it becomes viral, and I guess that's the way the other side plays.
No doubt. And so the other thing today that was really interesting is Senator Elizabeth Warren. We call her something. What do we call her?
I believe it's... No, because we can't call her Pocahontas because, in all fairness, that would be a major disservice to the actual We call her Focahontas.
You've changed it.
No. All right, but you know what? Before we get into her, all right, little scenario. You pretend you're the mainstream media. Imagine Donald Trump Jr. went around and sold that I had some sort of protected status and decided I had the good sense to come out and say I am 1,024th Native American and parade that around like it's a win. What do you think they would have done to me? Imagine I was legitimately 50-50 and I said it. What would they do? They'd lose their minds. But think about this. This is a viable candidate for the presidency of the United States. Not only did she lie about this, presumably get tenure, advancements, get into better schools because of this lie, she then and her team, after that terribly fake, beer live stream, I'm just going to be a regular American and get me a beer.
Thanks for being here, honey. Where the hell else is
going
to be?
Thanks for being in your
it's
house,
New Year's Eve.
husband.
Yeah. Thank you, citizen.
Yeah,
they can't get enough of that one. Yeah.
But imagine...
I'm going to grab me a beer.
Imagine being at that round table where we're like, holy crap, we got back the 23andMe. It says we are less than 1/1000th. And it's like, we got them.
Yeah.
This is a win. Imagine
though,
that person making huge decisions for you and your family. Imagine that mentality. Now, that mentality exists because, again, there is no backstop in the media. There is no one that's going to question it.
Well, you called her out on it and made a bet.
I called her. I actually put 10 grand up way before saying that I bet 10 grand that Kimberly, my girlfriend, is substantially more Native American than Elizabeth Warren.
6.1%. Thank you very much.
I got crickets, but it was fun. I like trolling. And but imagine being at that round table where we got Trump. 1/1000th, baby. 1/1000th. It's a win. That's what the other side can get away with. Again, imagine any conservative, but especially imagine my father tried to pull that. It would be we'd actually do it. So many liberal heads would explode. There would be no liberals left to vote. That's how bad it would be.
Impeachment. There you go.
So,
yeah.
That's the sort of frame of mind that you have to look at these things in. It's so far off balance. I'd say 2020 should be a no-brainer. 2020 should be the easiest re-elect in the history of the world. But On paper, that's accurate, but it won't be because we're not even close to a level playing field. You know, the amount of obstacles that we have to get through to be able to get regular messaging to Americans, to folks, not guys like us who sit there and consume this stuff 24/7, but for that guy that's working hard, you know, so with a wife that's, you know, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, they're consuming 5 minutes of news, and it's all negative. I mean, they literally couldn't go any 93% negative coverage with all the incredible economic stats we spoke about. How about all the foreign policy wins?
Sure.
How about North Korea?
ISIS.
Yeah, North Korea, the caliphate destroyed. If Obama had done one of these things, they would have made him emperor for life. He did nothing and decided to give Iran $150 billion in cash. Think about that. I mean, and he gets a Nobel Prize 8 days into being president. I mean, that's the sort of playing field we're up against. So it should be a no-brainer, but it won't be because they're going to figure out a way to manipulate, lie, cheat, and steal, and it's totally acceptable on that end. But we have some facts, we have real people, and we have actual real results and a real track record. So, you know, when people see it, when people talk, that's why it's so important to see young people actually engaged, actually getting it, actually understanding, because there are real-life consequences to being a conservative and being vocal about it. I mean, Charlie touched on it a little bit about, you know, college campuses, hey, yeah, we're with you guys. But we saw that. That's my biggest story of 2016. It wasn't, you know, the guys wearing the MAGA hats that were there to see me speak at some small town in, you know, the western slope of Colorado or in Iowa. It was the people that we ran into at like a little regional airport or a gas station filling up between stops that would walk up and go, hey, we love what you're doing. I mean, they wouldn't even vocalize it. Even in a, you know, a random place like that, they wouldn't say it out loud because they've been demonized, bastardized, hit left and right by the fake news media who's saying they're terrible people for wanting jobs. They're terrible people for wanting to see and live their American dream rather than giving it to some guy in a far-off land that hates our guts. That makes them terrible people. And
Right? Like the coal miners in West Virginia.
yeah, well, like
that.
virtually anyone. And what we saw was when we did our online polling during the campaign versus our telephone polling, to large sample sets. Any of you guys that take statistics, I mean, you're conservatives, a lot of you probably taking it. You're not taking underwater basket weaving and hoping to get a $500,000 job next year. That's the guys that just left. But when you're measuring tens of thousands of people in a sample size, you should get pretty close to a statistical similarity, right? Within basis points. And we notice consistently across the board, 15 points, not basis points, 15 full points difference between our online polling and our telephone polling. Because people, when they got on the phone, well, who are you voting for? They wouldn't admit, you know, we're writing in Bernie, we're writing in Jill Stein, we're doing. So we started asking a question because we couldn't get those things to reconcile. It didn't make sense. We started asking, okay, you're writing in Jill Stein? Who's your neighbor voting for? Oh, that guy's voting for Trump. Meaning the person probably most like you in the world, your neighbor, right? He was definitely a Trump. You were more than happy to throw him under the bus. You weren't going to take the heat. And the second we did that, those numbers just started lining up almost perfectly. And so on Election Day, even our own exit polling, we're saying, oh, man, guys, you know, we're down 12 in this. We thought we were going to take that one. We're down 12. I go, no. Tell me again. No, we're down 12. There's people say they're voting for Hillary. These people say they're voting for Trump. And there's about 15 people that are just giving us the finger. And I said, no, that's a Trump voter. I go, congratulations, we're not down 12, we're up 3. And guess what? We were. Because that same mentality was pervasive throughout. And I think, you know, it's probably changed a little bit, but there's still an element that's going to be underestimated in the polls. I mean, I think once you win, once you're there, it's a little easier to do it. But, you know, make no mistake. I mean, the coverage, the viciousness from the media is much worse now than it was during the campaign. So there is still that element that's, you know, trying to suppress that vote and that voice.
People
but
are
again,
still
when they're by
whispering they
themselves,
support,
when they're
all the
by
time.
themselves, just like they would be in a voting booth, just like they were online, it'll be our little secret. We're here to save America.
And far too often on college campuses, you're not allowed to be a conservative. It's very difficult. How many people in this room feel that you've been treated differently by a professor or by a teacher? See, I hope your university takes note of this, by the way. because
Of
this
the
is
people
not
that
right.
didn't raise your hands, how many have just done a good job of hiding it or not willing to? No,
Yeah.
by the way, I get it.
It's fine.
I get it because if you knew it was going to happen, you can avoid some of that. You know there are consequences. And that's why, it's great to see guys like Charlie. I don't want to toot, my father's horn necessarily, but like, hey, there's a real consequence to being a business guy. I mean, we do hotels and stuff. I mean, this is to the – I mean, you're going to piss off half the country, especially if you're a conservative. There's no consequence for saying I support Hillary. We've seen that from Hollywood, right? But there is on the other side, and that's why it's so important to see people like yourselves who are willing to step up, who are willing to say it, who are willing to go out there. Guys like Charlie who will travel all over the country. The liberal version of Charlie, there's no protesters, there's no this. He can show up, say whatever he wants. He's never questioned, never checked. He gets a glowing review from the school paper, and they move on. But it's different for us.
No doubt. And the issue that I think obviously affects everyone in this room that was demagogued horribly in the last 24 hours is the issue of student loans and tuition and the cost of college, particularly by Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I'll tell you, this issue is something that the Trump administration has done a phenomenal job of tackling, from job training, so on and so forth. But her whole way of looking at it is improper. First of all, I call it the game of loans, which is essentially a system that is rigged against everyone in this room. So how many people in this room were forced to take 1 or 2 or 5 classes that had nothing to do with your major? That if yeah, exactly. How is that? How are your interests being put first? Why not make college 3 years instead of 4 years? You could spend 25% right off the top. You could save 25% right off the top. The federal government gives out 99.8% of all student loans. It's not the big banks. It's not Wall Street. It's your own government that is the one that is making you fill out FAFSA, that then comes after you and says, you got to go to college to succeed. You got to go to college to succeed. 4-year college, the graduation rate from 4-year college is 59%. That means 41% of people that enter college will not graduate. I guarantee all of you know 1, 2, or 10 people that were here as freshmen and they're not here today. And their confidence is down, they're saddled with debt, and they should never have been told to go into 4-year college in the first place. But why? It's because for whatever reason in our society, being a plumber, electrician, HVAC, entrepreneur, carpenter is so important, yet we treat those people with less dignity and less respect. And that is wrong, by the way. And that's got to stop.
But by the way, so one of the things that we've seen, and where we go across the country on different campuses and speak, like the Young Women's Leadership Summits, that what I'm so encouraged by too is under this Trump economy, because he has been the best president for the economy that we have seen in, setting records, probably 60 years, is that people like yourself sitting here in this auditorium, when you graduate, you will actually get a job under this economy, because that's the numbers that this president has been able to provide. So guess what? Yeah, then you don't have to necessarily stay in your parents' family room or whatever. You can go home for Sunday dinner, but you will have a job and be able to pay back some of those loans and be part of this whole incredible economic metrics that the president has been able to achieve. That is a big, big deal, because we didn't have that before. But now it's record low unemployment for the person to your left, for the person to your right. You will get a job, and that's under this president.
And to expound on that and how it incorporates to everyone in this room, is that the left, they're going to have a relentless competition to try to buy your votes on something they know they're not going to be able to achieve. And I want you to tell the 5, 10, 15, 20 socialists in your life, not just how are they going to pay for it, show where it's worked before, but we could show actually how it's working today. It's not utopia. It's not fantasy. It's today. We have more job openings today than we have people able to fill those jobs. So even the protesters that hate us, they'll be able to find jobs in this economy.
Don't talk crazy now, Charlie. Okay?
Oh, okay. Wow. If they want to. And when you have more job openings than people to fill them, what happens? Wages start to go up. It's the first time in over a decade middle-class wages are starting to go up. And in this state today, the metrics came out, the lowest unemployment rate ever in Pennsylvania history. Today.
These are facts that even the other side can't argue with. The difference is they'll never report it as such. They'll never talk about that. They'll never talk about the implications of that and what that means because it's not convenient to their narrative. But, think about that. The best ever? I mean, that's all it took was someone out of the swamp, someone from outside of that bureaucracy, someone who's actually done it on their own, done it for others, to do it. And, it's not rocket science, guys. It's common sense. And it's such a shame that common sense is the only thing that's not common at all anymore in our decision-making process in D.C. and in Washington. But there are, grave implications for, again, selling that nonsense, selling these fake dreams, and it's going to hurt the country in the long run.
Well, and common sense on two other issues that, again, the left pretends that they champion. President Trump signed historic prison reform, which for years I've heard the left complain about our broken prison system. And there's a lot broken in our prison system. Barack Obama did nothing to fix our broken prison system. President Trump, within his first 2 years of office, with Republican Senate and Republican House, passes prison reform, which essentially now allows people with ridiculous sentences there for a couple decades for a non-violent offense to now earn credit so that they can go back into society better prepared and sometimes earlier. 500 people have now been peacefully and successfully re-entered into society.
Reintegrated, yes.
Reintegrated because of Donald Trump's prison reform. Where is the media on this? Where is the left? Donald Trump also passed right to try. You might not have heard about this either, and Kimberly talks about this so eloquently.
Yeah, I think it's just so important when you think about it. How many of us may have had a family member, a friend, a relative that has, been diagnosed with cancer? And can you imagine exactly, wouldn't you do anything to be able to help them to survive, to find a cure, to get them to even live a little bit longer? And there's drugs out there, but because of some of the paperwork and the issues with liability and whatnot, they wouldn't be able to get some of those drugs that are on the horizon, off-label drugs, to be able to try to save their life. But President Trump looked at it as a businessman and said, wait a second, why aren't you letting this family have this drug for their loved one to try to save their life? And he changed the whole thing by saying, okay, we're going to have them do waivers, they won't have this on their books, and it gives them a fighting chance to live today where before President Trump, they would have died. And you can't imagine the incredible stories that we've seen of people
We've seen on the campaign trail. There was a young lady that, about your age, college age, that had some sort of rare cancer, and they literally had drugs that they thought would work, but because of the bureaucracy and this, it would have been years out, and they could have never done it. She was able to, they gave her a few months to live. She was able to get on one of these experimental things. She's in total remission,
Right.
and basically everyone had written her off. I mean,
It would have otherwise been
think
a
of how
terminal
simple
case.
a solution that is. By the way, even if I just put my business hat on and get rid of obviously the incredible emotional component of that, I mean, imagine what that does for companies to allow them to test and to advance and to create and spur ingenuity in those fields rather than going through, again, an arbitrary 7-year study on things that may not work at all.
Right.
I mean, it makes so much sense. But
Because if you can cure
couldn't
those,
get done for
the
decades.
toughest cases, people that are stage 3B or stage 4 diagnosis, if you can actually cure those people or give them the chance to treat an illness as a chronic illness instead of a death sentence, imagine all the lives you can save. And this goes for children's cancers as well. Imagine a young child and you're a parent and you want to be able to give your child that fighting chance to be able to live. That's what President Trump's been able to do. And I'm incredibly just impressed and really just love what he's been able to do because, I lost both my parents, to cancer. And now there's drugs available that if someone gave them the chance to have those, they could be alive today. Imagine, that's life-changing for people. So thank you to your father for that.
So if you'd like to ask a question, you could do so you could tweet at the @TPUSA account, or you can message us on Instagram. We have a team going through them, and we have lots coming in on Facebook Live. So are we ready to have a couple questions asked? I know we had hundreds and hundreds come in, and very good. I know. Okay, yeah, we have.
Oh, there we go. She's a little short. It's okay. Kidding.
Please submit your questions so we can get them in the queue. So you can message us on Instagram or Twitter. We have a team monitoring all of it that'll be feeding it through, and then our chapter leaders will be asking them. So thank you.
What is President Trump's most amazing accomplishment that nobody's talking about?
You know, for me, obviously, you have the economic stuff, you have the foreign policy stuff. I mean, I think the progress we've made after 40 years stalemate in North Korea. You know, I always tell the story joking about, you know, little Chloe, who we spoke about earlier, watching these experts for the last 2 years on TV. Trump's going about it all wrong in North Korea. And I know because I've been leading the charge. I go, wait a second. This guy's been leading the charge in North Korea negotiations for 40 years. He's never even gotten in the room with the other guy. You know, so it's those sort of things. The, you know, moving of the embassy to Jerusalem, which was something that passed the United States Senate decades ago, 99-0. Not exactly controversial. Bush promised it. Oh, Clinton, other Bush, Obama, everyone promised it. No one actually delivered. It was going to be the start of World War III. Billions of people were going to die. He does it. 2 people threw rocks for about 14 seconds, and you know, we got our resolve back. So, I mean, that's a big aspect of it. But those are all pretty big wins that people get, even though it's not going to be reported on that level. But to me, as an American, as a father of 5 young kids, it's really been his ability and willingness to push back on PC culture, to push back on the crap that people come. You can't even have a conversation anymore with someone without worrying that, you know, in their minds, they can grossly misconstrue something to a degree that no reasonable person could ever, and that's gospel. And now you're a terrible person, and you're branded that way. So having someone willing to take on that fight, that, you know, a fight that, frankly, again, sort of like the whisper vote we spoke about earlier, that so many people are sick of, even on the other side, because it's gotten asinine. You know, I love that he's doing that. I love that finally someone with a soapbox and the ability to move the needle is saying it, because it needed to be done. I mean, it was just going way too far.
Hi, guys. So, what do you make of the Mueller report?
Well, listen, I think we covered it a little bit. Obviously, there's no collusion, no obstruction, nothing that I haven't been screaming for 2 years. But, you know, again, now that was 2 weeks ago, that was the end-all, be-all. Now that they didn't get the answer they want, you know, they're going to re-legislate it and try to do it a different way, just like they didn't get what they wanted in 2016, so they had to start all this. But, you know, the reality is, and people have asked, well, you know, do you feel bad about all the things you've been? Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit, because they accomplished a big part of what they were hoping to accomplish, which was to distract from this president's ability to get his job done. He's done unprecedented things, accomplished things that, you know, in 2 years that presidents haven't achieved in 2 terms. But just imagine the opportunity cost. Imagine the things that could have been done, the focus that could have been put on other things, infrastructure, whatever it is, if you didn't have this cloud over your head. I mean, think about the cloud. I mean, I can think of it as a father. Most of you guys are a little bit young, but they're running around. We're throwing your kids in jail. You're going to jail. You're working for the Russians. I mean, the dumbest crap ever. And they sold it as though it was gospel. And so they accomplished a big part of what they wanted to do. I mean, we arguably had probably the most successful midterm in 50 years. We basically did the same as Reagan in the House, but actually gained seats in the Senate. But, like, imagine you didn't have that one thing over your head, that one little doubt in the back of some independent's mind. Well, maybe. You know, and again, I consume the stuff every day. I lived it. I was the needle in a haystack, and it was only because we were so transparent we handed all the stuff over. Unlike the other side who took hammers and bleach bit to their stuff when they subpoenaed it. It was a little different. But, you know, there's always a different level of standard.
And the president did not assert any executive privilege. He was fully transparent. Everybody answered questions, etc. Didn't hold anything back. So they had their shot. They had no evidence to begin with. And this was really the greatest fraud perpetuated on the American people. And how about the taxpayers getting their money back after this nonsense? So enough is enough.
And so it's fine now. I mean, I think it will turn off many Americans to both the media who sold it as well as the Democrats who are still running around with their tinfoil hats on. But make no mistake, I mean, it accomplished a big part of what they were hoping it would do, and they did that in November of last year.
I just have to, there's so many questions that are still left unanswered, not in the way the media is trying to position them. First and foremost, what did Bruce Orr say in the 302s in the interview with the FBI, which is something you guys may or may not care about, but the person who actually was colluding with his own wife, who wrote the original dossier that began the original Russia investigation. I have some other questions too. What did Bill Clinton talk about with acting Attorney General Loretta Lynch? I can never say her name.
Golf and grandkids, Charlie. That's what it was.
2 days
That's what it
before
was.
Hillary
Where's the
Clinton gets
cynical,
acquitted, all of a sudden they're meeting on a tarmac in Phoenix, Arizona, in a private jet, and she gets acquitted of all related crimes, or it's a matter, they say. I'm really curious about that. Why did Susan Rice's unmasking requests go up dramatically right after the presidential election? And why did they try to cover that up? What did Obama know? When did he know it? And was he aware that the FISA court judge allowed spying on another U.S. presidential campaign? Was he aware of this? This is a question that everyone in this room should be curious about, because this should never be allowed to happen to another president again. Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, as the president calls them, the lovers, the lovers in the FBI. What was the insurance policy that he talked about on his government phone? Was that enacted? And what kind of oversight is now being done?
More importantly, if they had time to send 50,000 text messages amongst themselves, what the hell are they doing as a day job?
And that's just on their government phone.
Kimberly, you get like one text a day from me, okay? And she's a lot better than Lisa Page.
But
I'm like, don't text me, please.
This is one of the greatest travesties ever pulled on the American people. It was an inside job, and the more that we learn, the more questions that come. And President Trump should declassify the FISA docs. He should hold the entire process accountable at the highest level of the FBI. And for lying to Congress, if that's now the statute to go to Congress, well, boy, we have Hillary Clinton lying to Congress on multiple occasions. We have James Comey lying to Congress on multiple occasions.
Bleach bit, destruction of
Andrew
devices,
McCabe. And then
servers
the other thing
in the
is
bathroom.
they want to
What
talk
about the leaders of these committees, the quote-unquote intelligence committee?
up and down.
What about them lying to the American people and selling them and talking about all these facts that they have that no one else has seen and selling that as though it was gospel? How can someone like that run an intelligence committee? How can anyone in the American system ever trust anything that they have to say again?
It is one thing after the other, and make no mistake, if Republicans did anything close to this, if President Bush spied on President Obama, could you imagine? It would have been one of the most unbelievable media catastrophes that you could ever possibly consume. And yet now there's no one challenging this in the media. They're trying to only focus on something that is now completely debunked. And it is really too bad because they did it for nothing more than because they lost an election they thought they were going to win. Right. That is the only reason that this happened. And they put your family through it. They put the American people through it. They divided us. Still to this day, 43% of Americans think the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Still to this day. How does that happen? 43% of Americans are actually not that misguided. It's because of the media. It's because the media is a disinformation campaign towards the American people. It's one of the great catastrophes that I think we've seen. We have to hold these people accountable.
Absolutely. Well, justice delayed is injustice denied, and there should be a thorough investigation about this, like you said, Charlie. So this never happens to anyone else. This isn't just about President Trump, but anybody who runs and wins the office of the presidency. These people wanted Mueller to be their mulligan, their do-over. Then they want to get rid of the Electoral College. They're sore losers, and they're only hurting the American people, and it's enough.
Thank you. And please keep submitting your questions. We have people going over them, and then they might get chosen and asked. So,
what can we do as college conservatives do to fight back against the rising tide of socialism, and how can we change the college culture?
You're doing it. Yeah. You're doing it by being here. I mean,
true.
Charlie's led the charge on this, but the fact that you're able to be here, the fact that you're going to be outspoken about it, the fact that you're not going to let them box you in a corner, and pitch you on lies, or that you'll push back with facts, and you can do that respectfully, unlike really their side, because they don't do it too respectfully usually. But you guys are doing it. Everyone in this room is leading the charge, and you're going to be the future of the conservative movement. You are that next generation, and so my hat's off to everyone in this room for really having the guts to be here, because again, I get that it's not easy. We see that. We take a lot of heat. I'm used to it at this point. At 21, 22, I wouldn't have been that used to it. I wouldn't have been that willing to take it. So it's just awesome to see, and I thank you all for it.
And the most important thing for everyone in this room, as a college conservative, as someone who believes America is the greatest country ever to exist, and free enterprise capitalism is the most moral, proven, and effective economic system ever discovered, and the Constitution is the greatest political document ever written, and believe in free speech, that everyone has a right to express themselves and a right to be wrong, and of course a right to be correct. If you believe in those things, it's extremely important not to act the way that the left does. Don't heckle people when you find disagreement. And when you find someone that you disagree with them, try to ask them unlimited amount of questions of why they believe what they believe. Because if they're on the left, most of them have not actually thought through why they're actually in that position. But if you're a college conservative, especially after a couple years, it's impossible not to be a college conservative without having to defend your position at every single corner. Without saying, here's why I believe what I believe. First principles, American exceptionalism, here's the results and the success. What I find for all you conservatives out there, you will be better positioned and tougher because of the liberal college environment that you've had to go through. That you'll be more informed, you'll be more passionate, more likely to vote, and more successful in the future. So wear it as a badge of honor. Do not play a victim just because everyone around you is a leftist and the professor are leftists. Vote, organize, and then that's how we're going to show the left exactly our value system going into 2020.
Absolutely. You know, and I look out here and I see, you know, America's best and brightest. God bless you guys for being here because you sure are courageous. You're smart. You're not afraid to show your voice, your opinions, and to think for yourselves. This is the type of crowd that we need, the people that actually are going to contribute to society, that want to engage in the process and in the dialogue and the discourse. We're looking right out here at this incredible group. What if there is a future American president right here in this room, right? I like it. Right, Charlie?
You could submit your question on Instagram. You can submit the question on Instagram or Twitter. Next question.
All right, this is one
nice
from
of you.
Brendan Bridge, and he asks, while the other side seems to only care about resisting anything and everything with respect to President Trump, how can we bridge the divide and manage to bring both sides to the table, willing to engage in productive conversation?
Listen, I think we're trying to do that. I mean, I think that's the reality. We got to be able to move on from this. I think we have to have some accountability as it relates to everything that's happened over the last 2 years so that it never happens again to a president on any side of the aisle. And I think once you do that, how about you get Democrats to come on board and work on one of the many things my father still wants to get done? How about we fix our crumbling infrastructure? How about we...
Immigration.
These are not things that should be controversial. These are things that every American sees, experiences, goes through. The left holds the House right now. What are they proposing? I don't see a proposal. The one proposal they had was the Green New Deal, and they didn't even want to vote on it. So,
the
come
Green
up
New
with something.
Deal. Yeah, waste more of our money.
Let's agree to actually work for Americans together for a change. That's not that easy. I mean, I think we all recognize there's a broken immigration system. How about we fix that? They don't want to do it because it doesn't pander to aspects of identity politics and the voting base that they'd love to create. But I don't think there's people that reasonably say there's not an issue down there, whether you talk about human trafficking, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd love to see that happen. I just don't see it as being likely to happen.
Well, I'll tell you that there are some issues that should not even be, I think they're 99, if not 100 and nothing issues. For example, this U.S. Census question. Only American citizens should be counted in the United States Census. The fact that illegals and foreign nationals are being counted in the U.S. Census is mind-boggling. And all they want to do is have a citizenship box. Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes or no? And somehow this is a wildly controversial measure that has to be appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so I totally agree that there are issues that, by the way, this is not the Democrat Party of the 60s and 70s. This is a completely different, radicalized version.
Well, and I've said that, Charlie, as we travel the country, and again, I understand fully sort of the great irony of 2016, which was that it was the brash billionaire from New York that was able to actually speak and connect with blue-collar America. I mean, that's not supposed to happen, but it did because of those kind of values. I mean, he was able to do that and to be able to connect, and now he's delivering, for those people. And we got to remember that, because the other side doesn't want to. They've forgotten where it is, but we've been able to get rid of some of those traditional stronghold voting blocks of blue-collar Democrats, because this isn't their grandfather's Democratic Party anymore. Okay? When I see that, Don, I don't know, my grandfather would be rolling over in his grave if he knew I was voting for a Republican. I go, I get it. I totally understand the history. I understand the tradition. I understand every aspect of it. What would your grandfather say about this, that make up the pillars of today's Democratic platform? Say, welcome aboard. Congratulations, you're a Republican. It's not your grandfather's Democratic Party anymore. I mean, today, John F. Kennedy would be considered an alt-right extremist. They've lost their way, and, I think the lesson that they took from 2016 is the opposite lesson that I took from 2016, which is, in their minds, they just got to be further crazy. They're going left of Mao, and I don't think that's where America is. But, in the race, to win the primary, I think that's where you're going to go. And I think it's doing a major disservice to the party and to normal discourse.
When you look at the juxtaposition of what's going on in this country, and it really is a populist movement where the president is trying to lift everybody up with economic opportunity, and the facts, the statistics are there. And the juxtaposition with what's going on in Venezuela. Does socialism work? No, it hurts people, it kills people, it has people fighting, killing each other in the street.
It's going to be different here, Kimberly.
Well, that's the thing. That's what they tell me. That's what they
By the
tell
way,
me.
can you not act like you're the most important person in the room and just respect the process, please? Seriously. Then you can submit it like the other 750 other people are, nice, quietly, and respectfully using Instagram and Twitter. The next question right there. 750 other people have questions too. Use Instagram, use Twitter, and the question might be asked. Thank you for being here.
Big Daddy Reynolds asks, I didn't come up with that name. How as a conservative should I deal with liberal professors?
I mean, you're not going to convince your professor and change their mind. But I think when you're in a lecture hall, it's really important that, isn't it amazing that some people just want to make everything about themselves? It is really amazing to me. I think that would be a fair guess. Anyway, how to deal with a liberal professor. Look, it's very important to realize that many professors use their positions of influence to try to silence students and try to indoctrinate students. And we already asked how many students here feel as if they had their grades lowered or treated differently because of a liberal professor. We already went through that. But it's also important to realize that when you challenge a professor, you are putting your grade in jeopardy. So you have to make that decision first and foremost. And secondly, you're not actually going to try to convince your professor. You're going to try to convince everyone else around you listening. So don't try to target your arguments towards that individual professor. Try to say, how can I win other people over? And look, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of conviction and a lot of clarity of thought to do that. But when you do have a conversation with a professor, do not allow the professor to ever say, well, I'm right because I'm a professor and I have these degrees. That's a logical fallacy and an argument from authority. Don't tell me why you're right because you've never left college. Prove to me why you're right using logic and reason and facts.
Oh, boy.
We'll take two more.
So the next question is from Olivia Gato. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. As a country divided, I believe that the media is responsible for a lot of that division. How do you hold the media accountable for the truth and still maintain free speech?
Well, I mean, look, I think what's important and what's great actually about today is that there are podcasts, there are campus forums where people can come and actually hear the truth and don't have to be brainwashed by people who have an ideological bent. Yeah. Don't you have some homework to do?
then submit it on Instagram or Twitter like the 750 other people does. Thank you. Please, Kim, you're going. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the problem, right? That I'm so special entitlement mentality where they think they can cut the line and that their voice and their question is more important than people that followed the process and submitted it like we asked. Okay? Hello, basic.
Due to time, this will be the final question.
All right, this was submitted by Bobby Silver. How do you address the left's attempts to silence people who disagree with them? From tactics like labeling criticism of them as incitement to saying you can't speak on certain issues because you don't belong to a specific demographic.
Listen, I think, sort of like I said, what I love about my father is his ability to push back on PC culture. I mean, this is America. You can speak on anything, and you should. And you should exercise your First Amendment right. And I think you can do that respectfully. You can disagree respectfully, but that's the reality. When the facts don't line up, that's when they start with the identity. Well, you can't possibly understand that. You can't even have an opinion on something because you don't know. I don't think it's been an effective argument, but again, I don't think their policies are effective, so desperate times call for desperate measures. We've seen that. I've seen it. I'm not allowed to opine on any of these things because I'm the son of a rich guy from New York City. I get that. I still can have an opinion. I'm still an American. And I think I've done a decent job of creating a voice for other people who feel that same way, who are boxed in, who are concerned about it. It's that ghost vote. And guess what? That ghost vote was the one that showed the middle finger to the establishment and to all of the people saying that you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to want your family to succeed. You're not allowed to want to live the American dream because someone in a far-off land that hates your guts, they want that experience. I mean, it's really got to be the first time in any modern civilization where there's a big group of people basically saying that you're not even allowed to root for yourselves. You can't want the success of your people, above everything else. And I think my father fought back against that. He's going to put America first. Once we take care of all the other problems of of this country, then we can go help everyone else. And by the way, this isn't exactly a novel concept. Has anyone ever been on an airplane before? Mm-hmm. What do they say? In the event of an emergency, the oxygen mask will put yours on before those around you, because you got to be able to take care of yourselves before you can take care of others. We have a lot of things in this country that we're fixing, that we're chipping away at. But we weren't naive going into this process. The swamp is big. The swamp is vicious. The swamp has gotten very rich over decades establishing themselves. They're not just going to say, oh, okay, we're gone. I'll see you later. They're going to do whatever they can to push back. It's why 2020 is so important, because you need more time to be able to chip away at that. I think we're doing a phenomenal job on it, but it's not that easy. I mean, even from our own side, dealing with it and getting through some of that. Now they're starting to get it. You don't just have to take the loss because the other side wants you to. Mm-hmm. You can push back. It's given guys, in conservative America, the ability to sort of voice their opinions, and they've done that effectively, and they're building names for themselves and gotten rid of some of that establishment that, loves to talk so high and mighty about their principles until they're actually pressured, until they're actually questioned, and then they fold so quickly you can't even believe it. The left has gotten used to being able to have those wins because the right never had a backbone. Mm-hmm. They didn't. And we're changing that, and it's important. And I see that on college campus. I see that with the turnout that we're able to get. I mean, people are getting it. They've had enough. They're sick of the BS, and they're pushing back. That's what gave you Trump. And guess what, guys? Keep it up, because you're just going to give Trump another term.
Well, we finally have a president who isn't on an apology tour. He's not running around to different countries apologizing for America. He's actually working hard, getting things done every single day, no matter what they throw at him. And that's what matters. And by the way, no country is more generous. No country comes to the aid of other countries quicker, faster, or with more fortitude than the United States of America. We're number one in humanitarian aid, and we should be proud about that.
And to address that point, the brilliance of Martin Luther King in defiance of racist Southern Democrats is he wanted to create a country that was judging people on character, not on skin color. That it did not matter what you looked like, matter how you acted, and it mattered what you believed in. This was the brilliance and the moral superiority of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And now, all of a sudden, we're now in today's era where identity politics is now judging people on things they cannot control. Somehow you are less correct, or you can't have an opinion at the same level because you are a white Christian male from the Midwest. Hold on a second. Don't try to deplatform me or label me different because of something I simply cannot control. Tell me why I'm incorrect, or tell me why I'm wrong. And that's why identity politics is one of the most dangerous trends happening in America. It's happening primarily on the left, and if it ever creeps into the right, I'm the first one to ever denounce those people instantaneously, because that has no place in any sort of political discourse whatsoever. But primarily on the left, there's these conversations where they say, well, I don't like Joe Biden, or I don't like Bernie Sanders because they're not candidates of color. So wait a second. Tell me why their ideas are correct or incorrect. Don't try to start on these petty labels or differences. That starts very dangerous forms of tribalism, when people are not thinking analytically, but go immediately back to their tribes. And that's 5,000 years of regression happening in 5 years. And so for everyone out there, and it's something that primarily happens on college campuses, by the way, where everyone breaks into their own segment group, where now you have black-only dormitories on many campuses across the country. Wait a second, that's voluntary resegregation. People marched in the streets and risked everything to break segregation in the 1960s. We should be a country that embraces the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, which is on all of our currency and on almost all of our founding documents, which means out of many, one. That there is only one race, the human race. The left will destroy themselves over identity politics. We as conservatives should get nowhere near it, reject it, and renounce it, and we'll be better off because of it. So, thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
guys
for
so
showing
much.
up.
We really appreciate it.
Nine lives! Can't stop it! Each and every one!